So today is October 7th, and I told you all I would share the scariest experience I've ever been through. So without any further ado, let's begin. Today marks the 7th anniversary of one of the worst days of my life, shortly followed by one of the weirdest. For some backstory, my daughter Charm was born on December 2nd, 2004. At the time I was 17 years old, living on my own, with my then fiancée, we would call her Ashley, and now my daughter. Fast forward about 8 months. I had joined the army and married Ashley, so her and Charm could come with me after reaching my duty station. Our relationship was rocky, but we held it together as to not have our daughter go through what we had when we were growing up, divorced parents or missing one entirely. Fast forward a couple years later. Ashley and I had been separated, and I was in another state for work. I was sending money back to her, but not enough to where Ashley didn't have to work, so she soon after started living with a roommate. About that time, I realized I really couldn't go any longer without being around my daughter, so I sold the few things I had and caught a bus back. I had no job, no place to stay, but I had no worries about any of that. I would be with my daughter. I arrived back in Kansas, carried my bags the 3 miles to where Ashley and my daughter were living, with their roommate. I can't explain the joy I felt after being able to hold my baby again after almost a year of being separated. After a short visit, I grabbed my things and headed into the storm in search of a bridge to stay under, or even a condemned building. Shortly after I left, Ashley's roommate, Chris, pulled up next to me and offered to let me stay with them for a couple of days, which I gladly accepted. A few days later, Ashley and I decided to give it another shot. After all, we were still legally married. Things went well from there. Her roommate moved out, and even left the furniture and electronics for us, which included a TV of about 50 inches or so. It was an older model, not one of the new flat screens people were starting to get, but it was free and would do, and even came with its own stand. A couple of months later, my daughter was wanting a kitten. She had been seeing them all over the yard, due to the fact that one of the feral cats had given birth to a litter of kittens about a month and a half prior. I decided to go catch one for her. Yeah, probably not the smartest idea at the time, but I was lucky with animals. And why adopt when you can personally save them? The first one I caught had matted fur, droopy eyes, and looked all around ugly, so I let it go. The next one, on the other hand, was the cutest black and white kitten I had ever seen. I chased the kitten around for a while, and eventually trapped the kitten in a kennel and brought it into our spare bedroom. I should also mention that my daughter had a black poodle named Chocolate that she toted around everywhere. It was my baby's baby. Of course, we had to keep that area locked for a few days to assure that my daughter, as well as the poodle my daughter had, wouldn't be harmed or harm the kitten. During these days, we would go spend time with the kitten to see if it had the possibility of being domesticated. In no time, you would have never guessed that this animal used to be feral. We decided to name her Angel. As time went on, Angel, Chocolate, and my daughter were inseparable. Around this time, I had left my job at a Chinese restaurant I worked at and went to work at a deli in a local Kroger store. For the next month or so, everything was amazing. Then it started to dawn on me that Christmas was just around the corner, and I wasn't making enough money to give my daughter the Christmas I wanted to. So on October 7th, I mentioned to the store manager that I would be going back to my old job due to the pay difference. Shortly after that, I went home on my lunch break. On my lunch break, I took a nap on the couch with my daughter, only to wake up shortly after to return to work. I got ready to head back to work, kissed my daughter, and told her that I loved her. She responded, Loved you. Her way of saying I love you too. I had no idea that that would be the last time we would ever see or speak to each other. Not long after I returned to work, I received a text from Ashley saying that the TV wasn't working, so my daughter couldn't watch The Fairly Odd Parents. I replied telling her to just set it up on my laptop and let her watch it on there. About 20 minutes later, I was dumping some chicken grease outside in the receptacle when I decided to sneak a quick smoke. I remember standing there and hearing a lot of sirens in the distance. The sirens started to get louder, and I really thought nothing of it. As I'm standing there, lost in my own thoughts, the door that leads from the deli to the outside world swung open. "Your wife is on the phone," was the next thing I heard from a coworker of mine. I went inside to answer the phone and was greeted with Ashley saying, "Baby's hurt, and it's bad." I immediately hung up and clocked out without saying a word. I sprinted all the way home, and I remember hoping it was just a broken bone or something of that nature. I hold records in running from school to the military, so I made it home in a mind-blowing time. As I ran through the alley and into our backyard, I noticed a lot of police cars and an ambulance. I turned the corner from our backyard to our front porch, still running, as all the officers stepped aside. I never made it in the front door. As I reached our front doorway, I froze. All I could see in the living room was a big pool of blood and what seemed to be chunks in it. I also noticed that the TV stand was broken and our TV was on the other side of the room. I remember a female officer looking out the door at me and telling the other officers to hold me because it looked like I was about to pass out. What had happened while I was at work was that after Ashley had messaged me telling me the TV was not working, she got it to work and turned on The Fairly Odd Parents for our daughter to watch. Once the program had reached her favorite song, our daughter went to the TV to turn up the volume. At that second, the stand the TV was on broke, which resulted in the TV falling over onto my daughter, crushing her. Ashley said the last thing my daughter said was, "Oh." Time is very warped during this, but I remember not seeing my daughter anywhere, and I frantically began yelling for her. It was at this time they told me that she was in the ambulance. I started to go over there, and they held me back. About that time, I received a call from the store manager of where I worked. I don't know how, but I ended up on the phone with her. She then told me that they were going to give me a big raise. The only thing I said was, "My daughter is really hurt." She immediately apologized and said that at least there was a bright side. She didn't know how bad it was, and frankly, neither did I. Pulled away, I hung up the phone. One of the detectives there gave us a ride to the hospital, since we had no vehicle. Once we reached the hospital, we were ushered quickly into the back room. We waited for what felt like hours, and as soon as the doctor walked in, I dropped my head and started bawling. I didn't need to hear what he was about to say. His look said it all. "I'm sorry. We tried everything." He then asked if we wanted to see her one last time, which Ashley did, but I couldn't bring myself to do. I wanted the last time I saw Charm, my daughter, to not be bloody, bruised, with tubes everywhere. I still don't regret that decision. It seemed like only 5 minutes later, they handed us a phone book and told us to choose a funeral home. I don't know how long we took. It's all a blur. But the next thing I know, they said we should leave. We were offered a ride home, which we turned down. We were both in shock walking the 5 miles back to our house. On the way home was the store I worked at. I knew at home was a puddle of blood that I would have to clean up, so I stopped in to get the things I would need. As soon as I walked in, the store manager smiled at me I lost it again at this point and started bawling all over. We were brought into the main office where Linda, the store manager, got us water and listened to us. And then she shared with us that she had lost her son in Iraq not too long before. She asked me if I would still like to work there, and I replied that I didn't know, but if I did, I would not want to work with people. After that, she told me to take all the time I need. The next thing I remember, I was in the cleaning aisle crying. I knew I had my daughter's blood to clean up, but I didn't know how. After I don't know how long, I was at home cleaning up my baby's blood. I remember thinking while holding a cloth full of her blood that this would be the last time I would ever get to hold my daughter again. I know I wasn't holding her, but it was all I had. As I'm scrubbing the blood off the living room floor, the phone rings. The person on the other end was a representative from the hospital, seeing if we would donate Charm's organs. We couldn't stand the thought of letting a chance to help another child go by, so we agreed. They asked me so many questions that it really made me second-guess my decision. From asking if she was sexually active to asking if she was gay. The lady was constantly apologizing for the questions. She legally had to ask them, but it didn't make it easier. After I completed that phone call, I finished cleaning up my daughter's blood off the floor. Once I finished that, I had family to call. I called all of my family and notified them. That is when my mom and sister told me they were about to drive to us. I think it was the next day they showed up, but as I stated, time is warped during all of this. I remember we were all there for the final viewing, before her cremation. The funeral home had dressed our daughter in a princess outfit that we had bought for her. I think the viewing was set for the morning, but we didn't leave until closing. The first thing I noticed when I saw my daughter was that when they donated her eyes, they never put anything in to hold the shape of them, so we all saw sucked-in eye sockets, only covered by our eyelids which they glued shut, thankfully. Next, I noticed all of the stitches from her autopsy and organ harvesting. I knew what to expect, but nothing can prepare you for the actual sight of seeing your offspring so empty. I guess we were there for about 5 through 8 hours, and before I knew it, the funeral home operators came in and said it was closing time, but we could come back the next day for more time. We thanked them and told them it wasn't necessary. As we made our way out of the room, I was the last one out, and I remember looking back in, and it was finally sinking in that I would never see her again. Even though I had been crying for days, my body still had more tears to let flow. My mom and sister stayed a couple of days, then had to return back home. The next couple of days were very strange. I think the day after they left, the manager of the deli came by with a custom platter for us. They had taken my favorite cheese and meats and completely customized it, which wasn't cheap for them. I remember we made us each a plate, and then still in the habit, made one for our daughter. After we made it, we sat there and cried some more. Neither of us had it in us to throw it away, so it sat there for a couple of days. I think it was the day after that, but I can't remember. Our daughter's poodle Chocolate passed away. Chocolate was not old and had no illness. It really seemed she passed due to a broken heart. A couple of days later, I got home to find Ashley in our daughter's room, laying on her bed and talking to her. I really thought it was her speaking to her in spirit, only to find out she really thought she was still alive and with us. I didn't know how to react. Is this the time you smack someone to snap them out of it like you see in the movies? I ended up calling some family friends, and they said to immediately bring her to the hospital. I called another friend of mine to drive us, since we still had no car. I am still trying to cope with my own emotions, as well as now tending to hers. She legitimately thought our daughter was still with us, to the extent she made me put in a car seat and act like I was putting our baby in it. Once we reached the hospital, she was still out of it, until they put us in the same back room. Almost immediately after entering the room, things started registering to her. I wasn't alone anymore. She came back to reality and was released shortly after. Sometime after that, whether a day or a month, I don't know, the mother of my daughter's kitten, Angel, started meowing at the back door. I opened it, only for her to run away. After the fourth or fifth time, I stood there with the door open, only to see Angel's brother or sister, very sick, jump onto the porch. We immediately brought the kitten in and tried to nurse it back to health. Unfortunately, we were unable to save it. I still don't know how the mama cat knew we were the people to bring it to. Maybe because we saved Angel, and once she was tamed, we let her outside to play with her family, only to have her follow us back inside when she was done. After a few more months, we went to file our taxes, only to find out that someone had stolen our daughter's identity and claimed her on their taxes. We were able to get it resolved, and both wrote personal letters saying that whoever it was, we wanted them charged to the fullest extent of the law, though I don't know who it was or what happened to them. A lot of people tell you that pain will heal in time. That isn't true. You just learn to deal with it better. Ashley and I divorced about a year after our daughter's passing. As the years go by, it gets harder and harder to remember my daughter's voice. We used to sing a couple of Tech 9 songs together, our favorite being Cry Baby. And every time I hear it, I can still hear her. A lot of people think it's a bad thing to bring up the loved ones someone may have lost, but the way I see it is, no one truly dies as long as you keep them in your heart, and talking about them keeps them alive in some form. One of the most common questions I get is, how did you make it through this experience? The answer to that is simple. Take your depression and turn it into motivation. Now, that's not going to be an easy thing. You're still going to have a lot of pain and you're going to have to deal with it. I've had more than a few dreams where I die in the dream and everything goes black, and I can hear my daughter's voice. Every time I have those dreams, I wake up in tears because I wish it was actually real. To this day, I still wouldn't commit suicide, but I don't fear death. In fact, I'm almost excited, because then I will have a chance to see my daughter again. I personally am not religious, but the way I believe things is everything is energy, and energy cannot just disappear. It needs to be absorbed or dispersed. So in some form, I may already be with my daughter again. There are many outlets you can use to manage your emotions. The biggest one that has helped me through everything is my sense of humor. I try to make it my mission to get at least one person to laugh a day, and whenever possible, share the story of my daughter Charm. There isn't much left to say about my experience, but I would like to mention that the week following my daughter's passing, at least one child a day died due to furniture crushing them across the nation. I strongly urge all parents, grandparents, uncles, aunts, anyone who has children come to their place. Check all of your furniture. Bookshelves, dressers, TVs, even refrigerators and ovens. All of them have taken the life of at least one child. When you're checking your house, keep in mind that little ones love to climb on things. They're still trying to explore. So you need to have it secured to the wall, tightly. Make sure your bookshelves are screwed at the top, or at least strapped if you have to do it that way. You can never be too safe. It really isn't worth the risk of losing a loved one. Once they are gone, you don't get them back. Since my daughter's passing, I've always hoped that I would have the chance to warn people of the dangers that we live with every day, yet seem to overlook. I feel truly honored I have so many people willing to listen to my story, and I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I hope by sharing this, I can raise some awareness of the dangers lurking in your own home. I know this video wasn't an easy one to listen to. Trust me, I had to write it out and narrate it. I really hope it'll at least save one child, and even if not, now you have a look into my personal life, and you can kind of see what I've gone through, and why I take things so personally when I try to do things to help people on my channel. There is a lot more to YouTube than just trying to get subscribers and make some money. I do like doing content you all enjoy, but I find it just as important to do content that I feel is important as well. There aren't very many people that have thousands of people watch their videos every day, so I like to take that and convey a message that might do some good in this world. We need a little more of it. I'm sure a lot of you are going to feel urged to say that you're sorry for my loss down in the comments below, but rather than put that, I would honestly hope a lot of you go and check your furniture, then come back and put a comment saying that you've checked your house. That would mean a lot more to me. I have grown from this experience, and I am a lot stronger, and now I know how to deal with my emotions better. So please don't feel bad for me. Bad things happen to people every day, and I can honestly say, I probably don't have the worst of it. I have been through a lot in my life, but it obviously hasn't been enough to break me. So I hope you all enjoyed this look into my personal life, and if you did, please leave a like, subscribe, and please share this video. As depressing as this story was, I hope you enjoyed this little look into my personal life and the experience I've been through. This is truly the scariest experience of my life, as well as some of the weirdest. I'll see you guys tomorrow for another video, and I'll make sure it's not a depressing one. Until then, stay safe and have a great day. And just remember, it's always scarier if it's true. Bumblebee Tuna. Yes, that is an Ace Ventura reference. It's one of my favorite movies, and it's funny as hell. Like I said, humor is my way to help me through my emotions. I highly recommend you find what helps you through yours. Find something that you love,